Foregone is a side-scrolling kill-em-all platformer from Big Blue Bubble Games. Done out in pixel art style, the game promises fast-paced, pulse-pounding action along with a heavy dollop of some retro platforming on the side and some looting mechanics thrown in for good measure. Foregone has two main attempts. Firstly, combining elements from pretty much every Metroidvania and roguelike game you've ever heard of or played, and secondly, combining them into a new recipe that you won't have seen before. From what I've seen of this early access release, it succeeded in the first step and failed in the second. It's yet another one of the Epic Game exclusives, so you can pick it up on early access there before anywhere else. And Epic Games really are racking up the exclusives recently. Anyway, first thing you'll notice with Foregone is the art style. At this point, it's pretty fucking difficult to do pixel art and have it appear massively original. Foregone style smacks heavily of Dead Cells in particular. The levels range from a lush rainforest to an infested lumber mill to a temple/palace. They're quite varied and pretty well designed. They aren't procedurally generated, thank fuck, but they're expansive and they contain a host of nooks and crannies to explore and raid. You're given a decent map to help you navigate them, as well as certain sections containing locked doors that require the distance switch to be hunted down and flipped in order to open. Thankfully, the backpedaling in these is kept to a minimum and doesn't interrupt the flow of the game at all, which is quite nice. Of course, the levels contain enemies and they're a weird bunch, but again, they're not the most original or varied. Most only have one ability or attack and serve purely as suicide fodder. From the walls and ceilings, crawling bugs that will either swat at your ankles or spray you with gas, or exploding out a wave of bone spikes, they'll be one of the chief sources of enemy-based loot for you. Getting bigger, there's the four-clawed ball enemies that can swipe at you at close range, or spit a green acid ball for some range. There are also enemies with swords of their own that utilise a spinning top style attack. Much like the smaller enemies, the human ones don't have a tremendous amount of variety in them. From rifle guards with one-shot attacks to the machine gunners with a volley of them. There's also punching enemies who will gamely run up to you and try and thump you out, and spear-wielding ones that oddly don't use their weapons in a traditional sense, favouring an area-based attack. As you advance through the levels, they'll come in different shades, each indicating a different amount of difficulty in taking them out. Others will inflict status effects on you alongside shredding your health. The combat is the main focus of the game, however, and it suffers the most from this chronic lack of variety. You come equipped with an ammo-limited ranged weapon and a melee weapon. Now, the ammo isn't the only thing limited on your ranged weapon, as your only choices are between a slow-shooting pistol, an even slower-shooting shotgun, or a pointless longbow. They do all differ in feel and how they'd fit into a playstyle, however, so there is that. Good luck aiming any of them, however. Foregone uses an auto-aiming mechanism that auto-selects the nearest enemy to shoot, but the angles of this view can vary crazily. You'll be shouting out some choice words at the screen, trying to get the character to shoot at something almost right below her, but the game just won't register it as a target. The melee weapons are similarly limited. You have a choice between a heavy falchion sword, a short sword, or a pair of daggers. The lack of variety stems from each weapon only having one set combo of moves you can go through. They also come in varied flavours of rarity, and some come with status afflictions. Fans of Diablo will take to this mechanism like a duck to water. Or maybe they won't. The high chances are they'll just go and play a better fucking game. Because right now in its current incarnation, Foregone is not a good game. The game's problem all stems from the game not knowing what it wants to be. Does it want to be an immersive platformer? Well, it's failed there, because you're not told anything at all in the way of story. You know nothing of the war that has reduced the land to the hellscape it is now. You know nothing of the enemy you're fighting, or even why. You don't know the mission you're on, but you could probably surmise as, kill everything that's not me. In fact, you know nothing of the character you play other than your cybernetic arbiter. You don't even know anything about the people on your side. Without any of this, you can't get into the game at all. There's no investment. The game hilariously advertises itself as having narrative-driven gameplay, but what the fuck is the narrative? If you don't know who you are, what your mission is, who your enemies or your allies are, or why anyone is doing anything, then there can't be any narrative, can there? Does the game want to be a roguelike? Well, the levels aren't procedurally generated and there's no permadeath. The game just resets everything to your last save point every time you die. They've got the annoying difficulty of a roguelike here though. However, the game's difficulty stems from a series of artificial and cumbersome constructs rather than any real challenge. For example, every weapon has a huge delay, all of them. The falchion takes an absolute age to wind up, and the short sword and the daggers have 2 or 3 hit combos per button press, completely negating any advantage of picking a faster weapon. Even the ranged weapons have huge delays when firing them. Now you may be saying that it's realistic for a character to pause when shooting, but I'd argue that you're supposed to be a super powerful badass cyborg killing machine. Being able to shoot while moving would be considered a pretty fucking standard request from all of this. All this serves is to give the game a control scheme that veers between floaty and sluggish. Either way, you'll never really feel like you're in proper control at any stage. Plus, filling a level with ceiling dwelling enemies and not giving you an upward attack is an incredible dick move on behalf of the developers. What, the super badass super soldier can't look up? What is she, a fucking dog? Does the game want to be a looter RPG? Well, there's not nearly enough pickups to even remotely class it as a looter, plus most of the pickups are complete fucking trash. The improvements on the skill tree are all negligible, and the 2 equipable skills don't massively help with the gameplay either. The dash attack quickly stops being useful as it stupidly hits for only a set amount of hit points and doesn't scale up with the enemies, meaning that it gets useless really fucking quickly. The area attack can hit through walls, but it's even weaker than the dash. The heal only heals around half your health and takes an age to recharge, and the barrier is only useful if you retool every single item in your inventory to buff it up. Now that's assuming you pick up any items with the barrier buff, which you probably won't, as most of them are inventory clutter, only to be sold off at the next waypoint. Does the game want to be action-packed and fast-paced? Well, it does, but it breaks its flow at almost every step in its stupid pursuit of difficulty. You can't run and gun it because, as we pointed out before, you stop moving to make every attack, ranged or otherwise. So the game just sees you progress to the next set of enemies, stop while you blast or hack them to pieces, then proceed. There's no real option to skip or stealth by any of them, and you wouldn't want to either, as you need their drops to level up. Plus, due to each enemy basically being a glass cannon, you'd be cheesing as many of them as you can, which just kills the flow of the game dead each and every time. The bosses are also a particular annoyance, which is a shame because they really could have been Foregone's saving grace. They're ridiculously difficult as befits the rest of the game, but it's from an ignorance of their attack patterns rather than anything else. The instant you've seen them, they're quite easy to get around, so most of the boss battles will boil down to you running in, trying to get as far as you can before dying, and then restarting the section and giving it another shot. There's no tactics to it. It's just rinse, repeat until you're through it. Plus, as the save point are miles away from the boss areas, it means a long slog through the level each and every time. All this leads to a stop-start game with a lot of poorly designed elements that don't really affect the gameplay at all. You're sinking points into abilities that become redundant, gold into weapons and armour that need to be changed constantly, and redoing the same sections of levels time and time again against the same tired roster of enemies, only as you progress, they'll just have a different colour scheme. Someone on the development staff was clearly a Flimbo's Quest fan as a child. It's early access now and looks to be getting some tweaks in the future, but on the basis of this, there'll want to be some fucking major ones to make this a game that I'll want to sink any further amount of time into.